Here's how to use our designer label sheets to print your QR codes. So you're going to first go to the utilities and go to the sheet label designer. So this is if you're using a laser printer or a inkjet printer. So you'll go and you will create a new label here. So we'll hit next. And what do we want? Do we want a standard QR code or an activity specific QR code? So we're going to go with a standard QR code. And you're going to select your letters or your paper size. So we've got A4 letter or custom. So we're going to go ahead and take A4 here. So you're going to set your margins, and these are in millimeters. And what you can do is you can take out your sheet and start measuring by hand, or a lot of these have the measurements somewhere online that you can just look them up. So we're going to go ahead and make this top margin around 10. We're going to make the broad margin about the same because that's generally how they are. We're going to make the left margin and the right margin. So that looks about right for the printable area. So the outlying edges of all the labels would be into that. So we're going to go ahead and hit next. So how many rows and how many columns do we have? So we have, let's do a 30, which is a fairly common size. So we're going to go with 10 rows and we're going to go with 3 columns. Okay, so we click there and there we go. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the labels. Now we'll go ahead and hit next. Now, what is the height and width of each label? So if a lot of the time this will kind of already be, we've calculated it for you based on what you've set up. This may change a little bit, so what you'd have to do is hit custom and then put in your own sizes there. But what'll happen is these might shift over a little bit or shift up a little bit because sometimes there's a gap you need between the labels. So we're going to go ahead and leave it at that and hit next. Now this is where the column gap would be. So if you need a gap between here and here, you're going to put a column gap in there. So I'm going to make it 1 millimeter for there. That puts a slight column gap in there. And then is there a row gap? We're going to put another 1 millimeter gap for the row. And then we'll go ahead and hit next. So we basically got the label sheet designed now. And you can put a background on the label if you want by clicking browse, but you're going to have an image that is 62.67 by 26.8. And this will change depending on which size label you're creating. You could then put the background on the label. We would recommend a light colored background. And then you're going to go here and you're going to select what fields you want. So we're going to put animal ID, we'll put descriptor, we'll put the sex. The sex isn't going to show up, but it will put an icon in the bottom right hand corner. So that should be kind of how the label looks there. Font size, you can change that. You can change the line height, the padding around the QR code size, your left position, or where you want it, whether you want it on the left or the right. That would move it over to the right hand side, but we're going to leave it on the left. And the print start position would be, let's say you've printed a sheet already and you only used 4 of them, so your print position might be here as number 5, and then you would start there and then it would go on to the next ones. The text color would be black in most cases. You can actually hide the QR codes, not print those, or you can hide the labels, but we're going to go ahead and leave those intact. So you'll go and you'll hit next, and then what you've got is you can now select racks if you want to create one for the rack or any of your animals. So we'll go ahead and create a few animals here. Okay, we've done that. We're going to hit next on this. We're a little wide, unfortunately, here. There we go. Okay, so there we've got those selected. So we can either save and print this. So if we're happy with the layout, we can hit save and print, or we can just print it. So save and print would save this as a default for you, not your animal selection, but the design itself. Okay, but we're just going to go ahead and print this one. So now we've printed it. So this is how it's going to look on your screen. So now what we recommend doing is printing this out on white paper and then holding it up to a window so that you can see if it's going to line up properly. Something very important that a lot of people miss on this is because these are label sheets, sometimes the margins come out a little farther than what your printer is expecting for the sheet. So when you do print, there is something on most print dialogues that is called scale. or something to that effect. And a lot of them default to fit to page. Okay, now you notice this changed size up there when I did that. Okay, so what you always want is you want custom or you want 100%. Okay, so that's the size. You don't want to let it do any scaling at all, because then sometimes it will print off. Okay, and then you just go ahead and print. I hope that helps understand how to use the printing system for sheet labels.